Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. The Ukraine War News Update, the third part though for the 21st of December 2024. This is an almost Christmas Eve, Saturday night. What am I doing talking to the world on the Saturday night? I've just had an epic game of cockroach poker. If you haven't played that, it's a fantastic game. Such an epic game with the family, with the whānau, and had a game of Kariba, another small box game. Had couple of glasses of Ukrainian white wine and into the night, and my partner's watching with her daughter a Bridget Jones movie, so I'm opted out of that one, and I thought I'd catch up with the geopolitical news concerning the war in Ukraine. So that's where I'm at. Where are you at? Let's go first of all to the Yi Peng 3 vessel, which was, if you remember, the Chinese vessel that supposedly, almost certainly, severed cables, multiple cables in the Baltic Sea, and communication cables between the Nordic states and Denmark, and also one of the Baltic states as well. But that it had a Russian captain, severed the cables with a dropped anchor purposefully, so the theory goes. It's now been in Danish waters for some time, and it's just basically done a runner on the way to Egypt. This is what happens when you kind of adhere to international laws and norms and the other side doesn't. What do you do here? The Yi Peng 3 vessel, suspected of sabotaging sea cables, has upped anchor and set sail for Egypt. It's been in Denmark's economic waters for a month. Sweden launched an official investigation, but its prosecutor general was denied boarding. You can bet if that ship was in Russian waters, it wouldn't be denied boarding. So who's doing the denying? Why is that? We need to just be able to be strong in our convictions. Now, the problem is that if you don't adhere to those strict norms and laws, then you are you no better than the people you are, in this case, at war with, the people that you decry for not adhering to laws and norms. So, you know, on the one hand, it's absolutely right that if it wasn't legally correct that the prosecutor was able to board the ship, then, you know, we need to adhere to those laws. But sometimes you just think, goodness me, this is what holds us back. But then that's a route to chaos, isn't it? Nonetheless, the Chinese ship has just gone, and so there we are. Can we do a proper investigation? No, because that ship has gone, and you cannot do a tangible investigation on the hardware of the ship to see what had happened. It's really, really frustrating. Okay, the Czech Republic is to ban Russians from obtaining citizenship. That's a pretty strong ruling taking place there. As someone says, long overdue, but we need to make sure there are no loopholes. Hope the system gets tested by agents provocateurs. So yeah, strong there from Czechia. The Slovak Prime Minister Fico will travel to, you guessed it, Russia on December the 23rd. What a Christmas present for Putin there. Gets to hang out with his mates like Robert Fico. That's according to Alexander Vučić, the Serbian Prime Minister, in order to meet with Putin. So the visit is due to the fact that Ukraine will stop transiting Russian gas from January the 1st, according to Vučić. This will create serious problems for Slovakia. There is an awful lot riding on that decision. I don't think Fico is at all happy, because there is a severe, or potentially a really severe ramification to the contract not being extended beyond this year by Ukraine. The transit contract for Russian gas passing through Ukraine in order to get to Russia. Indeed, I've got something on that. Where have I got it? By memory, I've put something on this. Right, so here we are. No, it's not that one. Oh, where are you? I've got something on the gas transit. Maybe I haven't. Oh, well, we'll get there, and I'll say, there it is. I told you I had something. We've got a map of the gas transit going across the... yeah, there it is. I do have it. Right. Anders Aslund here says, note the names of the Russian pipelines through Ukraine to Europe. So this wasn't apropos to anything particular, but the two big gas pipelines are called Bratstvo Brotherhood, and Soyuz Union, while the oil pipeline is named Druzhba, which means friendship. Russia has used all three to corrupt and extort Ukraine. They've used Brotherhood, they've used Union, and they've used friendship to corrupt Ukraine. Goodbye to these three Soviet lies. So the Kyiv Insider says Ukraine announces something that should have been done long ago. The end of Russian gas transit begins on January the 1st, at 7 a.m. in the morning. And here we have those three pipelines. One goes through the north of Ukraine and then cuts down. I presume that's one of the gas ones that cuts down to go into Romania and further to south into Bulgaria, and then carries on through into Slovakia there, while an oil pipeline, I presume that's the oil one, also passes into Slovakia and then goes to is that Hungary there and up into Austria. So this is, if that's right, I'm not sure if I've got my countries correct there, but yeah, this is really serious. Slovakia is rattled. Robert Fico has been mouthing off about Ukraine for a number of days, precisely because it is going to hurt Slovakia big time. Right, moving on. Tens of thousands are still marching in the centre of Tbilisi in Georgia, paralysing the city with traffic jams. Protests in Georgia continue over election fraud and the government's refusal to pursue the EU membership talks until 2028. And that's No Reports reporting that. And that's great. This is what we want to see. Long may it continue. It needs to be not more forceful, but there needs to be a permanence to this, where Georgia is ground to a halt, and this costs the Georgian government too much, so much so that they have to in some way capitulate to the demands of the people. And let's remain on that for a second, because here's your man, Bidzina Ivanishvili, who is the guy behind Georgian Dream. He's not a politician anymore. I think he might have been a politician at one point. Correct me if I'm wrong. But he's now like basically the founder of the Georgian Dream Party. He's the I guess the Elon Musk of Georgian politics. You know, he's the money behind it, and the power rests with this guy. Now, sanctions are already working, says Terje Heland. Bidzina Ivanishvili is petrified, and his panic proves it. How do we know? By watching how he and Georgian Dream have reacted to the wave of sanctions over the past weeks. Let's go through it. So, when the Baltic states imposed sanctions, Ivanishvili scoffed. He ridiculed them, dismissing their actions as, quote, only hurting the Baltic people. There was no retaliation, no panic. Indifference was the message. So this is where Lithuania, for example, Gabrielius Landsbergis here saying Baltic states have agreed to impose sanctions on those who undermine democracy in Georgia. So, yeah, no problem, says Ivanishvili. Whatever, it's going to hurt you more than us. Then came the UK and US Magnitsky sanctions. The tone shifted instantly. Ivanishvili slammed the panic button. What's he so afraid of? Two things. One, appearing weak. Two, cracks and defections within his power structure. So the US and Britain imposed sanctions on Georgian Interior Ministry officials. Just hours after his sanctions hit, Ivanishvili scrambled to signal strength. So Vakhtang Gomelauri, sanctioned, is promoted to the vice prime minister. Medals of honor were announced for him and other sanctioned loyalists. Compensation was promised. Quote, the state will cover their financial losses. Kobekidze appoints US and UK sanctioned interior minister as vice prime minister. So that's an interesting reaction to those sanctions. This isn't confidence, this is fear. When you have to reward loyalty with promotions, medals and money just to keep your circle intact, it's not strength, it's desperation, says Heland. Quote, if any official will suffer any financial loss, the state will fully compensate them, says the illegal prime minister of sanctioned high-ranking officials. But here's the problem, he continues, for Ivanishvili and Georgian Dream. They don't understand how the Magnitsky sanctions work. Magnitsky sanctions aren't just symbolic, they're isolating, consequential, and contagious. Here's another quote. In addition, financial institutions and other persons that engage in certain transactions or activities with these sanctioned individuals may expose themselves to sanctions or be subject to enforcement action, so secondary sanctions there. The prohibitions include the making of any contribution or provision of funds, goods, or services by, to, or for the benefit of any designated person, or the receipt of any contribution of provisions or funds, goods, or services from any such person. So By helping these people out, you could therefore be a victim of the sanctions yourself. Under the Magnitsky sanctions, anyone who interacts with sanctioned individuals can be targeted next. That's banks handling their accounts, colleagues working with them, businesses serving them, even pizza delivery companies. In theory, no one is safe. So sanctions implications, another quote here. As a result of today's actions, all property and interest in property of the designated persons described above are in the United States or in the possession of control of US persons are blocked and must be reported to OFAC. In addition, any entities that are owned directly or indirectly, individually or in aggregate 50% or more by one or more blocked persons are also blocked, unless authorized by a general or specific license issued by OFAC or exempt. OFAC's regulations generally prohibit all transactions by US persons or within or transiting the United States that involve any property or interest in property of designated or otherwise blocked persons. US persons may face civil or criminal penalties for violations of EO 13818. Non-US persons are also prohibited from causing or conspiring to cause US persons to wittingly or unwittingly violate US sanctions, as well as engaging in conduct that evades US sanctions. So the potential for these, if they're properly enforced, are pretty wide-ranging, right? By doubling down, says Terje Helland, to protect his loyalists, Ivanishvili is dragging everyone with him. The self-proclaimed government, the election fraudsters of Georgian Dream, the enablers, the corrupt financiers, the propagandists, all of these people are now in the crosshairs. And he continues, Ivanishvili knows defections are coming and is freaking out. No one wants to risk their future over a leader in panic mode. Sanctions are a wedge. They create pressure, and under pressure, systems like Georgian Dream begin to crack. The walls are closing in on Ivanishvili. His fear is justified. Sanctions are working, and his actions betray the desperation of a regime in freefall. The only question is who will defect first. That's a really positive view of what's going on. Whether it tracks with reality, I don't know. I'm sure there is pressure. It's going to be really interesting to see if any cracks do appear in the Georgian Dream government and whether there are going to be any defections. There were defections, kind of low-level defections in the protests initially with some sort of police-adjacent personnel and others who moved over and said, I'm quitting my job. I can't be doing with this. But it seems like Russia does have a bit of a stranglehold on the country. Right, we're going to move from Georgia now to Germany and America. So Elon Musk has said something that's pretty egregious, or at least is seen as being pretty egregious, which is his tweet. His tweet was, only the AfD can save Germany. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about Germany, the AfD, the terror act that took place yesterday, and Elon Musk. Elon Musk has a history, whether you like him or not, he has a history of advocating for radical extremists, such as the Belgian neo-Nazi that he heralded recently, the AfD here, any kind of right-wing populism he seems to be a big fan of at the moment. He is truly showing his colours at the moment, Elon Musk. When you are retweeted by Alexander Dugin, by genocidal, ultra-nationalist philosopher whose thoughts underwrite Putin's policies, politics, and actions, you've got to start thinking about yourself, surely. You've got to have some kind of self-awareness. The analogy would be if we were in some kind of alternate reality where I said something or a bunch of things on Twitter and Hitler was retweeting me, I'd have to be thinking about whether I was on the right side of morality, okay? Like, if the worst people on earth are saying, this man's right there, totally with you there, you are the man. If you are being endorsed by the worst people in history, then you're probably not a good human being. So if Elon Musk is getting retweeted by Alexander Dugin for his advocacy of AfD, which is already seen as a right-wing extremist party, then you've got to worry. Now, he's trying to do a bit of firefighting at the moment, because he's come out and said, well, look at Alice Weidel, one of the more moderate members of AfD. She's a lesbian whose lesbian, I think, wife or civil partner even is Swiss of Sri Lankan descent. And so you're like, well, how can they be a far-right extremist party if Alice Weidel is in the party? It's like, okay, that's a fallacy of hasty generalization for a start. But you know what? We can cherry pick our way through any movement in history and say, well, look at this person. This person is vaguely all right. Therefore, they're all vaguely all right. Therefore, they're not extremist right-wing. Okay, whatever. If that's what you want to do, Elon Musk, to try and justify your advocacy of AfD, then, you know, go for it. But nah, not having it. So this is causing quite a lot of trouble at the moment. Now, particularly because there is going to be an election in just a couple of months, and AfD are second in the polls, and it's all very worrying for those of us like myself who would prefer some kind of sensible centrism as opposed to this kind of extreme right-wing populism. So Musk's ex-post back in the AfD sparks a firestorm, says Olga Lautman, further aligning his actions with Moscow's interests and deepening concerns about his threat to democracy. And this then prompts a Substack piece from Olga Lautman. We'll just look into this very short thread. Not short thread. I was actually going to try and see if I could get an archived version of this, but you can't get archived versions of Substack. You can't get around that thing, which is, you know, absolutely right, of course. In terms of intellectual, actually, this might be a free one. Oh, that would be good. Interesting. Okay, so Lautman has got her whole piece here. Now, I'll probably read you just to start this. The reason why this is important is because if AfD do really well in the elections in Germany, then these people are pro-Russian, and the party is certainly pro-Russian more than not, and you will get a real dilution of German support for Ukraine. And at the moment, Germany are the second biggest supporters of Ukraine. It's rather like Trump getting in, oh dear, what's going to go on with support for Ukraine? Now, Trump might be changing his mind on stuff, but essentially him and his MAGA acolytes are more pro-Russian than they are pro-Ukrainian up to this point. Things might change if they get decent information, but intuitively that's where they sit. Now, this piece, Only the AfD Can Save Germany, declares Elon Musk, starts. After derailing a bipartisan bill in Congress that may lead to a government shutdown, actually that's been solved now, acting President-elect Elon Musk waded into Germany's politics by endorsing the far-right alternative for Germany, Alternative für Deutschland, ahead of a critical snap election. His post on X, Only the AfD Can Save Germany, sparked outrage in Germany as Musk continues his efforts to support Russia's far-right projects in the US and Europe. Interestingly enough, The Guardian recently reported that on the US election night, a group of far-right German nationalists, including AfD candidate Philipp Anders Rau, met with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Their meeting, which largely escaped media attention, underscores Trump's connections to European far-right factions, the majority of which are funded and supported by Russia. The AfD, classified as a suspected extremist group by Germany's domestic intelligence, is projected to secure 19% of the vote in February's election. Musk's endorsement and recent actions have fueled concerns about the growing influence in Europe, including his talks with Nigel Farage about potential $127 million donations. That's £100 million, answers my question from yesterday. To Farage's pro-Russian Reform UK party, as it is seen by some people here. Musk's meddling extends beyond tweets, with secretive ties and calls to Putin and full control over Trump as he assumes the role of acting president-elect. By amplifying nationalist agendas, dismantling democratic norms and aligning with authoritarian figures, Musk's actions mirror Russia's playbook for destabilizing Western democracies and advancing its political goals. This is really, really worrying. So it looks like in here, let's go a few more paragraphs. Musk's support for the AfD cannot be viewed in isolation, but rather as part of a larger pattern of behavior aligning with Russian interests. Reports emerged a few months ago of secret calls between Musk and Putin, during which the billionaire allegedly discussed a range of topics, from Russia's genocidal war in Ukraine, on which Musk has publicly sided with Russia, to personal matters and broader geopolitics. The communication, along with Musk's decision over the past 2 years to limit Starlink's functionality for Ukrainian forces, continues to raise alarming concerns about his role in advancing Moscow's objectives. Also, recent reports indicate that Starlink technology has been used in Russian drones responsible for killing Ukrainians. Musk is not a mere bystander, but an active agent of influence using his immense wealth and resources to undermine Western unity and destabilize democratic institutions. His access to US security clearance and numerous government contracts only deepens the gravity of his actions and as he exploits his position to weaken the very systems that uphold democracy. This is nothing short of insanity. In the United States, Musk has expressed plans to dismantle federal agencies, vowing to fire scores of employees in critical institutions such as the FBI, CIA, and Department of Justice. His agenda also aligns with long-standing Kremlin goals of weakening America's intelligence and security apparatus as he runs disinformation and destabilization tactics designed to erode trust in public institutions. So on and so forth. It goes on to talk about the AfD and how the AfD is itself tied to the Kremlin. Okay, so there's your context. You've got the surge of AfD support in Germany, which is problematic for Ukraine. It's problematic for democracy, and it is pure right-wing populism that is growing in sentiment across the United States, across Europe, being supported by Elon Musk, who is an unelected oligarch at the very center of power in the US. Okay. Adam Kinzinger says, literally, it's a neo-Nazi party, not even joking. This drug-addled billionaire thinks he runs the world. Talking about Elon Musk and his, his attention to ketamine. But, okay, so then we see what happened last night. This terrible incident where someone drove a car into a Christmas market and killed a number of people and injured an awful lot of people. Now, the alleged driver of the car that drove into a crowd of people is in Magdeburg, is a 50-year-old Saudi Arabian. So a Saudi Arabian doctor, refugee doctor, I believe. There was information... So, anyway, before we go and look at the details about this guy, no matter what the reality of this man is, what happened last night in Germany is absolute fuel for the fire of AfD. This is exactly what AfD want. You can't think of anything that would go down as well as this for AfD with the upcoming elections. This is such a shame for Germany. They will absolutely feed off the frenzy of a supposed Islamist who has gone and mowed down a bunch of people in Germany, given the whole history of immigration and Merkel and so on and so forth. Okay. We heard loads of really contradictory stuff coming out. So we heard early doors from Der Spiegel, and Shashank Joshi talks about this, that the German attack suspect, I can say from experience, everything that Tommy Robinson, this is what the person said, everything that Tommy Robinson, who is an English far-right activist, everything that Tommy Robinson says, what Musk says, and what Alex Jones says, so conspiracy theorist and Elon Musk, or anyone who is called radical or right-wing extremist by mainstream media, they are telling the truth. Oh, wow. So the guy that mowed these people down wasn't an Islamist, blah, 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 but is actually someone who is flirting with far-right thinkers here. As when you ask, as this is Matt Steinglass saying, when you ask, was the suspect an extremist? What kind of extremist did you have in mind? And here we have the live blog from Der Spiegel that says, in fact, the full readout of what it says is, I've got it over here because I got the translation myself. Let's just find it. Yeah, so this is what the full text of the live blog said. So Taleb A, who is this chap, apparently shared the resentment of conspiracy ideologists and agitators such as the US podcaster Alex Jones and the British far right-wing activist, Tommy Robinson. The entrepreneur Elon Musk, who has increasingly openly expressed his sympathies for right-wing parties, was also one of his role models. Quote, if you listen to someone like Tommy Robinson and Elon Musk, as we just heard, and even if you are ignorant of the process of Islamization, you will think that they are both conspiracy theorists, said A in an interview. But I can say from experience that everything Robinson says, what Musk says, and what Alex Jones says, or anyone who's described by mainstream media as a radical or right-wing extremist, they are telling the truth. Taleb A said in an interview that he is not a right-winger, but describes himself as a leftist. So then you've got this theory that he's actually a left-wing atheist that's gone and done this, like an ex-Muslim. On Friday evening, Jones is considered America's top conspiracy theorist and claims, for example, that alleged global elites have allied themselves against the USA and that same-sex marriage is a conspiracy by a global secret society. In 2020, so on and so forth. And it talks about Sandy Hook, conspiracy theories, and Alex Jones. On Friday evening, Elon Musk called for the German Chancellor to resign in response to the alleged attack in Magdeburg. Scholz should resign immediately, said Elon Musk, wrote the richest person in the world on his platform X, criticizing the German head of government as an incompetent fool. In another post, Musk shared video footage that appeared to show rescue vehicles at a Magdeburg Christmas market. Horrible, he commented in the footage. Right. So then you had claims that this guy was actually an ex-Muslim involved in with the far right. And you're like, oh my goodness, what does that mean? 8 years ago, he wrote on Twitter that he wanted to start a project together with the AfD, an academy for ex-Muslims. That's what he said 8 years ago. The alleged perpetrator A is obviously a fan of the AfD, according to the evaluation of his social media accounts by Der Spiegel. In November, he formulated 4 demands for the liberal Saudi opposition on X. The first point was Germany must protect its borders against illegal migration. It has been shown that the open border policy was a plan by Merkel to Islamize Europe, he wrote with reference to the former chancellor. So then you're like, okay, so is he exactly what is kind of being hinted at here? But then why would you mow down a Christmas market? It just makes absolutely no sense. And then these kind of theories or this kind of thinking came out, and actually Marel Salmassi seems to be quite reasonable here, but I don't know too much about her. Despite claims made by the German press, Taleb al-Abdul-Mohsen is not an ex-Muslim atheist, nor is he a fan of the AfD or Elon Musk. While he may have spread this misinformation himself, it aligns with the practice of taqiyya, an Islamic doctrine that permits lying and deception to advance Islamic objectives. So this is really interesting. So although the Quran says, dishonesty is terrible, there is one doctrine that is not wholesale taken on, but is taken on by some, which is that so a Shia can lie if they're being put under pressure by Sunnis to show their kind of true colours. Like, it's okay to lie. So if you remember, I talked to you about moral consequentialism the other day, which is you can do something horrible if it brings about a greater good. So that kind of moral consequentialism is exactly this. So you can do something that's terrible. So I can kill one person, but as long as it saves 5, pull that lever on a track and it saves one person, but it kills one person, but it saves those 5 people who are tied to the track or whatever, or working on a track. Okay. So in reality, this could be what he's doing, which is lying about himself to advance the Islamic aims. So in reality, he's a radical Shia Muslim, as evidenced by his name and numerous tweets and chat leaks circulating on Arabic-speaking platforms like X. Disturbingly, his plans to carry out mass killings of Germans were brought to the attention of the German authorities by a Saudi woman. Tragically, the police ignored her warnings. The links are added in this thread. And she brings a lot of receipts here to what her position is, which no, is not an atheist ex-Muslim. It is actually a proper Muslim who has decided to attack. So what the truth is, I don't know exactly, but I find it weird that someone would choose to mow down a Christmas market if they weren't an Islamist, basically. Anyway, Shashank Joshi says, sources, quoting the BBC, sources close to the Saudi government tell me that it sent 4 note verbals, 3 to the German intelligence services and 1 to the foreign ministry, on what they called, quote, concerns around his very extreme positions. He says all were ignored. So the Germans were warned by the Saudis about this guy. However, another experienced counter-terrorism expert believes the Saudis may be mounting a disinformation campaign to discredit someone who started off trying to help young Saudi women escape abusive relationships and seek asylum in Germany. So then there's this idea that actually he had been trying to help people escape Saudi Arabia to liberal Germany, so it's blah, 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 blah. All these crazy different theories. So Shashank Joshi says, the end result is, whatever the reason for this person doing that, it's going to favour AfD. Shashank Joshi says, a grim scene in Magdeburg, in addition to the many people who commemorate the victims of the attack in and in front of the Magdeburg Cathedral, people who chant right-wing slogans also mix. In other words, there are people there who are now giving right-wing chants are good. Let's read this. So in addition to the many people who commemorate the victims of the attack in front of the Magdeburg Cathedral, people who chant right-wing slogans also mix them again and again. Several hundred participants gathered in the central square of the city. Among other things, a banner with the word remigration and so-called home flags could be seen there. Shouts like "We are the people" could be heard. The neo-Nazi Thorsten Heiser is also on site, according to journalist Thomas Voreyer. Heiser shouts during a demonstration based on a Nazi slogan, "Germany, wake up from your evil dream." In addition, Heiser has deportation professions against guilty politicians chanted. This is not looking good for the German political scene. Shashant Joshi again, now quoting from Handelsblatt, says, apparently there were clues that were not followed up, but an ex-Muslim who wants revenge on Germany because it is allegedly too tolerant of Islamists there's never been such a case. Even a vigilant state cannot promise absolute protection. Nothing makes sense of this, really, if he's supposed to be someone who is an ex-Muslim who wants revenge on Germany because they're too tolerant of Islamists, then mowing down essentially probably a Christian or secular, a bunch of people in a Christmas market. Who is this? Alexander Clarkson has pointed out there's been at least one such case on an Iranian in 2016, and a Frankfurter Allgemeine interviewed the Magdeburg perpetrator in 2019. So maybe there is some kind of precedent at all, but it is not. Like, whatever the reality is, whatever the truth is behind this, is not helping. In the latest polls, says Derek Tinas from Romania, in the latest polls, AfD was already estimated to be Germany's second largest party with around 19% of polling popularity. After yesterday's terrorist attacks, Musk's relentless tweets in support of AfD, and whatever it is the Russians must have planned, some very dark days might be ahead for Europe. This is a massive challenge for Europe. Honestly, I cannot. The reason I'd spent a long time on this, trying to give you at least a sense of the confusion. The confusion plays ideally into AfD and Putin's hands here. And, this is on the back of Musk. The Hill have written a piece on Musk flooding Twitter with spending bill misinformation. So he had this thing where he called off the spending bill, the continued resolution. I talked about this. And then they tried to bring up an alternative, and that failed, and Republicans voted against that. And eventually, last minute, just before the final kind of bell, if you like, they agreed something, broadly aligned with what was originally the case. And Musk is playing around with American politics, but the Hill article talks about misinformation that he's spreading on that. I mean, the man is just like, he's taken over Twitter and just using it as this fire hose of disinformation. It's so disappointing. And talking about disinformation, do you remember Joey Manorino? I reported on him as a guy that had a sock puppet account on Twitter. So he's a MAGA American, but he had a sock puppet account as a black woman and was like, as a black woman, I'm voting against Biden. I can't blah, 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 blah. But he forgot to log out of one of his accounts, and basically he was commenting as Joey Manorino, but as that black woman account, and everyone's like, we found you out. This is a sock puppet account, and just shows you what people do, pretending to be other people online. Anyway, he's just come out and said what is the most controversial of statements here. Absolutely incredible. So Joey Manorino, an American getting involved in the AfD here, saying, love that the German government has collapsed. What a beautiful Christmas gift. Rooting for the AfD to take the country over and rule as heavy-handed as they legally can. Wow. They need to be as hardcore as they legally can. And then this is the absolute cherry on the cake. A right-wing Germany combined with a right-wing Italy and other nations in Europe who have taken a shift to the right could unite the continent in a way not seen before. Hang on. When was there last time that there was a really right-wing German leader and a really right-wing Italian leader, and they got together and what happened? What was it that happened around there? Joey Manorino, you absolute wingnut, sod off. Right, okay, moving on from that whole debacle. But, what I want to say is be very warned about Germany and what's going to happen there in the upcoming elections. I think AfD are going to surge. Right, Ukrainian drone attacks have caused serious damage to the Russian oil refining sector and budget, according to Bloomberg, which you already know. In 2024, though, let's get some stats here. Average daily seaborne deliveries of petroleum products from Russia amounted to about 2.2 million barrels. This is 9% lower than a volume of 2023 and 10% lower than 2022. In other words, they are exporting by sea less and less oil with each passing year. This is good news. Sanctions are working. They're tough and trying to keep those loopholes pegged down, trying to keep those ghost fleets from operating effectively is difficult, but it needs to be done. This is Russia failing to make as much or export as much of these hydrocarbons as they were previously. We've already talked about these transit routes that have been shut down by Ukraine. So that's going to hurt the Russians. This could be a serious issue for the Russians. Now, interesting stats coming up from the Financial Times. Russian liquefied natural gas. So where you can't pump the gas down these pipelines, if you want to get rid of that gas and export it, then you have to put it through a fairly complex process where you liquefy it. But actually the Russians don't have the capacity to liquefy all the gas that they produce, and if these pipelines shut down, they're in trouble because they cannot liquefy that gas, so they really are going to be hurt. However, liquefied natural gas imports to the EU from Russia have reached a record high this year. Europe imported a record 16.5 million tonnes of Russian LNG as of mid-December, above last year's imports of 15.18 million tonnes. The amount is also higher than the last record of 15.21 million tonnes imported in 2022. In other words, Europe, while they're sanctioning Russia and pipelines are getting cut off, they are importing more and more Russian liquefied natural gas. So something is wrong there, and that needs to change. However, as ever, I always do this, which is, right, let's look at explanations, though. It's really easy to just criticize. But what's actually going on there? My guess, and I don't know, this is pure speculation, I could be wrong, but European nations are going to be flailing, going, right, we can't take gas from Russia. Oh my God, we still need gas. We absolutely have to get gas because our nations are relying on gas and we can't just turn that off. It takes a long time to wean ourselves off gas if we're going to do that. So where do we get the gas from? What happened immediately is that the US started exporting more and more LNG to the point where they're now the biggest LNG exporter in the world. So, and they are importing a lot of LNG to Europe. So there's definitely been a replacement of some of that gas, the pure like gas, that they were getting from Russia, replacement by liquefied natural gas, and they are replacing a lot of that with what's coming from America. So that's really good. But my guess is that it's not enough, and so European nations have gone around and said, okay, so we can't take gas from Russia, but we still need gas, so we are going to have to just take some liquefied natural gas. So I'm guessing, and I'm kind of hoping as well, that the increase is not replacing the Russian gas. They are replacing the Russian gas with liquefied natural gas and other gas sources elsewhere, whilst taking some liquefied natural gas from Russia, which is then breaking records because they're already taking a lot before the war, and now they need to take that and some more because they need to replace the gas. But actually, the liquefied natural gas was probably not nearly as much as the gas that were getting from Russia. So it's a relatively small amount of liquefied natural gas, which has now increased a little bit in order to try and mitigate the sanctions and the gas pipelines that are being shut off. Okay, so my guess is that this is probably not as bad as people think, but it still needs to be sorted out, right? This is still counterproductive. We need to have weaned ourselves as Europeans off Russian hydrocarbons. End of. So I hope that something happens about that, but I'm just trying to explain that it's probably not as bad as people think while still being bad. But I could be wrong. Right, moving back to the US here. Republicans have jumped 20% in wanting to end the war in Ukraine as quickly as possible, even if that means Ukraine loses more territory to the Russian invaders. This is bad, and it also shows the importance of the leader and not the content. People are easily swayed. And it turns out that you don't really hold rationally to positions as often as you might think you do. That actually we're far more inclined to just listen to what the leader says. You might be a Christian walking into a church, or a Muslim into a mosque, or a Jew into a synagogue, and you might have some moral ideas of what you think is right, and then you walk in and your pastor or your rabbi or your imam says, actually X, Y, and Z, and you go, okay, yeah, okay. And we are so easily swayed by people in authority. This is Stanley Milgram's experiments, and Milgram experiments show this. Like, people in authority will sway us. And our own sense of rational intuition and own sense of moral intuition often goes out the window when these authority figures dictate X and Y to us. So you had the run-up to the election where people were kind of thinking all sorts of different things. And then as the election came along, it started getting a bit more problematic for Republicans who believed that we should continue supporting Ukraine. And then that campaign ramped up that rhetoric against Ukraine until you got to a point now where you've seen a 20-point shift from March 2024 to December 2024. There's your election campaign. So the question is, which would you prefer the US to do in Russia-Ukraine conflict? Try and end the conflict as quickly as possible, even if it means allowing Russia to keep territory it's captured from Ukraine, or support Ukraine in reclaiming territory Russia has captured, even if it results in a more prolonged conflict between the two nations. So now both sides have shifted a little bit, actually, but the Republicans even more so. And that is unfortunate, isn't it? Independents, interestingly, coming back down a little bit, but Democrats shifting 9 points to the worse, but still, 30% there wanting a quick end, even if it's worse for the Ukrainians. 74% of Republicans. That is really problematic data there from Gallup, and it just shows the power of the person or the messenger rather than the content or the rational justification for the content of the message. Shashank Joshi goes on to say it's true. So we talked last couple of days about Trump possibly wanting NATO nations to spend 5% of their GDP on defense to qualify for NATO, and also the possibly advocating continued military support for Ukraine, although there could be strings attached for that. Thank you, Ukraine. Shashank Joshi, referring to the FT here, Financial Times, is absolutely bang on here to say it's true that Trump aides have told Europeans they want defense spending at 4 to 5%, which the US doesn't do itself. But it's also true that they've said privately that they'll settle for 3.5%. It's not exactly the world's most advanced negotiating strategy. This is absolutely true. Everyone now knows, because everyone's read the Financial Times, at least anyone that's going to be involved in these discussions will have read the Financial Times, knows now that the Americans would settle for 3.5%. What's the point in saying 5%? That boat has sailed, mate. Yeah, but we know that you'll be happy to settle for 3.5%, so we'll be arguing over that and get it down to 3% or whatever. It's just like a really bad negotiating strategy to let all of that information out the bag. Okay, Tucker Carlson has claimed that any Republican senator who opposes the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard for the Director of National Intelligence, who is an Assad apologist who, like Tucker, has been parroting Kremlin talking points for years, is an enemy of the United States. This is such troubling rhetoric. So this is a turning point, a USA conference where he's saying anyone who doesn't support Tulsi Gabbard is an enemy of the states, of the US, enemy of the state. And that's awful because she is a bad choice. You've also got Elon Musk promising to primary anyone who votes against these nominees. You've got attorneys promising to investigate anyone who votes against these nominees. This is not democracy. This is a bullying regime. Is absolutely incredible. Where is the freedom? You Republicans used to bang on about freedom and liberty all the time. And to talk about freedom of speech, you don't have freedom of thought here. You don't have freedom of action. You can't have freedom of vote. You're being strong-armed to vote in a particular way that your dictator wannabe wants you to vote in. That is not freedom. If you can't vote with your conscience, you don't live in a free and fair democracy. And if these senators and representatives can't vote with their conscience, they do not operate in a free and fair democratic system. This is terrible. And if Republicans don't realise this as much as Democrats realise this, this is not cool. Now, yeah, of course, there are party whips. And we can talk about how party whips go and do this all the time. But these aren't party whips we're talking about. These are third-party entities threatening lawmakers. This is Tucker Carlson. This is Elon Musk. This is the attorney that I talked about the other day. I forget his name. These are not elected officials threatening people who would vote other than the way they want them to vote. It is not acceptable. Now, the CIA director who warned of the Russian invasion makes a farewell trip to Kiev. So Bill Burns, in his intelligence about Russia's plan to capture Hostomel airport, helped to save Kiev in 2022. Today, he returned to the Ukrainian capital for his farewell visit as CIA director. He will be on the way out, sadly, because it's likely that someone like Kash Patel will take over. Right, there's a couple of comments I just want to very quickly go over. Just because they annoy the hell out of me. You know me. Yes, already YouTube comments, whatever. Kip Humphrey here, who has been off and on the last few years. What I do not like is being mischaracterized. So don't take my claims. Don't lie about what I say. So I don't know why this needs to be said, but spending more on defence while hostile nations are actively threatening you and invading your neighbours is smart. So this is the 5% of GDP on defence. I know you hate Trump, but you can't be so deluded that you can't fathom or process that you've been reporting on escalating war for years now, with Russia threatening nukes regularly and China vowing to go to war by 2027, and yet you still can't rationalise increasing military spending. Analyst of the century here. Right. I'm very close to swearing at you, especially now I've had a couple of wines, Kip. But Kip, if you're going to come here to my channel and not understand what I've said and build up a straw man of me and mischaracterize me, then you can jog on, mate. I did not say I was against raising spending on defence to qualify for NATO. What I said was talking about Trump's rationale for saying these things and whether he has the ability to do those things given debt ceilings and needing to raise a debt ceiling. I was talking, I don't think I even passed judgment on whether it would be a good or bad thing to raise spending on defence. But I'm telling you now, I think we should raise spending on defence. I've said that, if you had listened, for the last however long, right? We are not spending enough on defence. It's an insurance policy and we need the best insurance policy we can get. But actually, I think we need to spend more on Ukraine's defence and our defence right now. But in general, it is important that we have a really good insurance policy. There you go. I'm telling you now. Whether that's 5% or 3% or 3.5%, I don't know. I couldn't tell you at the moment. And it depends what goes if you spend more money. If you spend up to 5%, what can't you afford? Okay? So we can debate about that, but I've never once said we should not increase spending. I was talking about Trump and his rationale and what he had said before the election and what he's saying now. So please do not mischaracterize my claims. Second thing, I get this an awful lot, and I'm wondering whether this is troll behavior, and I'll be interested in what your thoughts are in terms of actual kind of paid up trolls, because I see the same structure of comments that happen, and I think it's kind of Russian trolls, especially when you don't hear these people ever, other than these odd comments. This is a perfect example of you having no clue how US politics works. If I could have a penny for the amount of times I've been told that I have no clue about US politics, and by the way, for every time I'm told that, I have other people telling me I understand it really well for a British person, and basically what this boils down to is whether you agree with what I say or not. It's about a partisan difference here, not the fact that I'm ignorant. This is a perfect example of you have no clue how US politics works. You've been wrong about everything so far. During a campaign, no, I predicted the election incorrectly, but I'm not aware that I've been wrong about anything else. So during a campaign, it's common and expected to go against your competitors to drive the narrative of being incompetent. This has gone on for decades. Only ignorance it shows is your understanding of US politics. Obama did it, Hillary did it, Trump did it, Biden did it. So this is the idea. I think he's trying to say that politicians always lie and then go against what they say, or something like that. Go against your competitors to drive the narrative. So possibly it's the idea that the Democrats were for Ukraine, so we're going to be against it. But then you get in and then you completely change your mind. My point was, if you're, this is a ridiculous comment, right? If your electorate believe you, and then you change your mind, and you're always going to change your mind, and you're lying to your electorate, and they have voted for you on account of a lie. So it's deeply problematic. Now, saying that everyone did it, I bet this guy was absolutely incandescent with rage when Obama and Hillary Clinton said one thing and did another. I bet they're like, that's totally wrong. You're like, there's never once do you go, of course Obama's going to do that. This is a Trump fan or a troll. Of course Obama's going to do that. Yeah, why are you having a go at Obama for lying to his... No, he's not going to have done that. Absolutely won't. So this is just double standards. But it annoys me when people who just disagree with me say you know nothing about this subject, when other people say you do know a lot about this subject, and I really agree with you. All this is telling me is that I've said something that fits in one camp, and anyone who's not in that camp doesn't like it. Oh well, that's life. A couple of other comments. Can anyone suggest another channel that I can get update information from, reference Ukraine? I've had it with Jonathan. I agree with pretty much everything he says, including the Trump issue, but I don't want to listen to non-stop Trump dumping on a daily basis. The world is a bigger place. Now, I do get this, John Reed. Like, I don't like Trump. This is true. Like, from a moral and political standpoint, and actually, I just think he's not strong in his convictions of policy. I don't think, like, he's a bit vacuous. He just says whatever he thinks people want to hear. I don't think he's particularly ideologically led in most aspects. Like, he could easily be led on Ukraine, and he'd be, if he was advised in one direction by people around him for a couple of years in a pro-Ukraine direction, he would be pro-Ukraine, I'm pretty sure. Like, but it's, I don't know if that's even more dangerous to have someone that can be so easily led by nefarious people around it. Anyway, larger point is that, yeah, okay, I don't like him, whatever. But if I don't report on him when he is the president of the one country that is in a position to help Ukraine the most and has helped Ukraine the most, what am I doing here? I have to report on him daily. I just have to do it. Like, he is so... it's like, you can't report on America. I'm so annoyed that you're reporting on America to do with the Ukraine war. Okay, well, they're pretty important. So, honestly, mate, I do get that, John. Like, I'm not having a go at you, but honestly, if you can't report on the US political system with regard to Ukraine, then you can't report adequately on Ukraine. It's just, that's how it goes. And there was just one more. And just a completely different one. I don't know if you guys remember, a couple of times previously, I'd mentioned comments from J Dog Rules 5014. Morning, John. He'd basically been watching the channel loads and then joined the Marines. He said, morning, John and chat. It's been 3 months and I finally graduated from Marine Corps basic training yesterday. I now have my phone back and so I can start watching your videos again. Would it be possible if in one of your videos you could take a minute to just sum up everything major I missed while I was without any technology? Goodness me, probably not. I'm well aware that Trump won the election, but besides that, I've been in the dark. I miss your vids and I'm glad I'll have at least a month to keep up with the news finally. Wow. So just, well done. Welcome back. For the short time you probably lost your phone again and doing whatever else, but thank you for checking back in with us. Anyway, I really appreciate all your support. Please remember, we are running the campaign for the Christmas truck, or the trucks under the Christmas tree. We are doing really well, 1,755 euros towards our 40,000 euro goal. It's amazing what you guys have done. We're almost there. I really appreciate your support. Anyway, in the meantime, please like, subscribe and share. Please remember to subscribe to the channel. Click on my face above. That'd be fantastic if you can. And I'll speak to you soon. Merry Christmas, everybody.